let's see if Evan will join us. Thank you, everyone watching from the visitors room. It looks like we have about 20 folks in there watching now. So thank you for joining us. Looking forward to a robust discussion on the journey to the IMO and the EGMO. You can hear from the coaches and the leaders and the participants on their experience in preparing for it and studying for it and traveling. So really excited for Po to lead us in this discussion.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. Nice to see all of you. Nice to always see the familiar faces who are here. And also, I really want to welcome everybody who is watching. Just so that we have some sense of whether or not we have some connection with you, may I request that anyone who's watching, if you don't mind say like where you're from, where you are right now, and what you are. Are you a student? Are you a teacher? Then we have an idea of who our audience is. And while you're doing that, I think we'll just run through and do some quick introductions. I'll just say hello. Hi, I'm Po Shan Lo. I am a mathematician. I run around the world telling people about math. I'm currently calling you from White Station High School in Memphis, Tennessee, because I'm on a nationwide tour giving talks in cities everywhere. But other people on the panel, how about we go by alphabetical by first name, the people on the panel, just like where are you, what stage are you in what you do? I was just going to go with the official panel. But
Yes.
Bill, if you want to jump in, you can too.
No, I was trying to figure out if I'm first alphabetically or not, but I'm actually just crashing here. I'm not on the panel. I'm Bela Bainok. I'm the AMC director, and welcome everybody. I am in mid-Maryland at home.
Jen, do you want to go before me?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Barton. I am not a panelist, but I am the Director of Competition Operations for the MAA, and I'm thrilled to have our first inaugural session at Math Fest. So excited for the discussion, and thank everyone so much for joining us on our discussion today.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I am a mathematician, although now technically a software engineer at Waymo. I'm in Mountain View, California, and I've done many math competitions. I have coached for the EGMO, and I was also the co-editor-in-chief for USIMO for the past, and USIMO and EGMO for the past 2 years.
Great. And the next person, I guess, is Luke.
Hi, I'm Luke Robitaille. I'm going into my senior year of high school. I'm homeschooled and I'm in Texas near Dallas. I was on the IMO team this year as well as in 2020 and 2019. So, I guess I have a different perspective than older people or something.
Hi, I'm Megal. I am one of the current EGMO coaches. Currently, I'm between undergrad and grad doing math research. And yeah.
Cool. Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I am also one of the EGMO coaches. I currently generally live in Massachusetts, but I'm currently in California for the summer.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. And thanks for our panel for saying hello and sharing where they're at and what they're doing. Thanks also to the people who are watching. If you just came and you're wondering what's going on, I intentionally asked for people to say roughly where are you and what are you doing, because then that helps us to get a sense of where to run this panel. But I can see that we have an interesting mix here where there's a lot of students and there's also some people who are teachers and coaches. So something people are always quite curious about is, if you do these math contests, how much math do you do every day? Anyone want to jump in?
I guess I can go. Besides Po, I'm probably the oldest on the panel. And when I was doing math competitions, I was doing a couple hours every day. Started in middle school. I would finish my school day and then do my homework and then do 1 to 2 hours of math problems or reading solutions, except for weekends. Sometimes I would only do like math on 1 or 2 of the weekends.
Only.
Only. But then, of course, I did a lot of summer camps as well. And so I did Awesome Math. I did the Math Olympiad summer program. And like, those are just math all day, every day for 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the program. I mean, you do get to eat and sleep. So there's that. But it's basically math besides that, which is pretty cool.
Awesome. Anyone else want to share their perspective? It doesn't have to be what you did. It can also be, since we have a number of coaches here, it's like what you also see students doing.
My experience in high school was pretty similar to Jenny's. I would do math like, sometimes in school and sometimes like lots of times outside of school. Yeah, also probably a few hours each day.
So it's not like everyone has to answer every question. So I'm just going to go on this because some people say things like, oh my gosh, how could you do so much math every day? Was it like tiring, frustrating, boring, or anything? Or obviously not, because you did it. So what was the thought process? What inspired you to want to spend all of these hours doing mathematics every day?
I just thought it was fun.
You mean the same reason why some people play video games for hours every day?
Yeah. I mean,
that
I
could be a
also do
job
that, but yeah, no, I've really enjoyed math. I enjoyed learning. I think working on interesting problems in all areas of mathematics are neat, and so it was very enjoyable for me. I think I might be a little out of the distribution for some people. Well, I guess not that out of the distribution, but my parents never forced me to do it. So I was always doing it because I liked it.
When I was in high school, I remember I would I mean, I know that not everyone finds all aspects of math fun, so that's like too ambitious, but maybe. But like what I did was I just took the problems I thought were fun and I did those a lot. So you just find one area of math which you think is fun, which for me was combo problems. So I just did those and didn't bother to get good at the other stuff. I mean, maybe this isn't the best advice, but like I do think there's some value to the fact to like just getting good at the math you think is fun, and like math areas of math contests are related enough that like being good at one area often bleeds into another, and maybe you'll get better overall if you like actually like what you're doing. So just find what you find fun and do that a lot in math.
So that's interesting because some people might be curious. Like, so suppose you are spending this time doing math. What do you do? Do you just like find a bunch of problems and practice the same method over and over again? Or how did you find a good problem? How did you decide what to spend your time working on?
Yeah, I mean, from what I was saying, I just gravitated to what I found fun, which was solving problems. But I could believe that if I spent the same number of hours actually reading math, it might have, like reading more math and learning more theory, maybe that would have been better for me, but maybe I wouldn't have been able to do it because I found it less fun. So that's maybe a thought that I'm curious if other people had a similar response to.
What do others think?
Spent a lot of time working on problems, reading solutions when I couldn't find the problems. And then when I had the opportunities, I did have some awesome coaches in middle school and in high school. So when they were teaching, I would go and listen. I didn't really get into reading mathematics as like a way to learn it until I actually got to undergrad. So it was mainly lectures and that sort of style learning and working on problems myself.
So I'm hearing a common thread here, which is like working on problems is an important part, but then you have to know which problems to work on. And of course, Megal said she chose things that she found interesting. But actually, I think something that's very useful to share with a lot of the community is, how do you find a good problem to work on? Because I'm sure that all of us have our own opinion of like, what does it mean to have spent an hour well working on a problem versus like what might not be as useful.
For me, when I chose problems, I would just go on like the our problem solving site and go to the contest section and find like a contest I knew had good problems. Like I feel like a lot of contests have different flavors of problems, and like, you know, maybe you prefer one flavor over the other. So I would just like, you know, go to contests that I had tried problems in before and like, you know, had liked those problems, and just would pick, you know, off the top, like I'm just gonna try like 2012, you know, number, I don't know, 5 or something today, and just do it.
2012 number 5, you mean like which contest? Just so that, because we have lots of people
I don't know.
watching.
I made up a year and a number, so I have no idea.
No, that's cool. No, the reason I said so is because we actually have a very diverse audience watching this talk. I'm sure that some people are working on like AMC questions, some people are working on AIME questions, then there's some people working on like Math Olympiad, IMO, USIMO questions, because this is called the Road to the Olympiad. So I was a little bit curious, like, you know, as you were doing all of these, when you went hunting for the questions, were you looking for like a proof type question or like a calculate the number type question?
Yeah, I guess I was mostly talking about proof type questions, but for like short answer questions, when I was like, you know, first starting to do math, like math counts, AMC, I actually found I did a lot of problems on AOPS like Alcumus, which I found really fun because like you can solve problems with the answer and it tells you you're right or not right or wrong, and it's like, I don't know, I just found it extremely entertaining and like engaging.
So you mean somebody made a video game where you play the video game and you get better at math?
Yeah, sort of, I guess.
Yeah, I see. Other people want to chime in on like how you chose good problems to spend your time working on?
Little older than Rachel. I had books full of math problems.
What's the internet?
Was just starting to be a thing when I was in high school. But I had like books of like IMO problems and USIMO problems and other problems I started to pick up. I still have like, I think, a book of like Brazilian Math Olympiad problems that someone gave me at some point. I was looking at my shelf because I couldn't remember what country it was from off the top of my head. But yeah, so there's probably books. Those books are probably online now. But there's also like yourself. Like especially getting into like graduate school and like also writing questions yourself, you can kind of just like come up with a question yourself. You're not going to know how difficult it's going to be until you solve it. But that can be a lot of fun. So like maybe you're curious, like, oh, like I saw this coordinate problem where there was a frog jumping around on a Cartesian plane and it was moving from Cartesian point to Cartesian point, a coordinate point to coordinate point. And what if it was like a triangular grid and I did that same problem or something like that? And so like maybe it's too hard. Maybe we don't even like have the mathematics to solve it yet. I don't know. Maybe it's much easier than when it was on a square grid. But I find that to be a lot of fun of like, how can I take this problem and twist it? Or like, that seems interesting. How would I formulate that as a math problem? And like, can you even solve that problem? And then you're kind of jumping into the unknown because you don't have a answer booklet to go look up, but it's always just fun to explore.
Cool. By the way, I see that some people have already started asking questions, which is fantastic because that makes this more interesting. Otherwise, we just go down the description and ask the questions in the description. So this is fantastic because I think that the question that was just raised by Serge is really interesting, which is about, you know, if you coach math team in a marginalized community, probably they haven't gone to Awesome Math Camp and probably they haven't paid for AOPS classes, right? Oh, hi, Serge. Actually, Serge, do you want to ask the question? This would be great. You're even on here. Well, I can also read what you wrote.
He's muted still.
Serge, you are muted. But that makes this more fun, honestly. I don't really like panels where there's a bunch of people sitting in an elevated stage in the front who are the experts. Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks. Okay, yeah. So I coach my school's math team, high school math team, in Chicago, Illinois, and I'm at a school, you know, like many urban and rural schools alike. You know, I'm in a marginalized community, low income community, and So I don't know, like, I was just thinking about, like, what would be like a good starting point, resources, strategies to use. I'm just like looking for like any sort of help, strategies, resources, whatever, to sort of segue my students into more advanced problems, because I want, thinking about agency, thinking about equity, I want to get, my students, and also, students from marginalized communities nationwide, more of them to participate in AMC and other more advanced, contests without, being intimidated, turned off. Like, I want for them to like, have a good experience with it, and continue to want to like grow and like, do such contests, and not, be turned off by it.
Yes, this is a fantastic question. So basically what we're hearing here is that there's like multiple parts of this question, which I think would be very interesting for people to touch on. One, of course, I'm happy to answer too, although I'm supposed to be the moderator, so I don't think I'm supposed to answer the questions. But anyway, so I'll just say, I think there's two really interesting angles here that maybe we can dive into. One is, of course, how would you start learning these things if you don't have those paid resources, let's say, like what should you go, and what's a practical way to start? But there's the second piece, which is called, if you throw people into a very hard AMC problem, they might just walk away and say, forget it, this is crazy. And any thoughts? Anyone have thoughts of like how one might approach these kinds of things?
So the first thing I would ask would be like, what are the age of the kids, because this is going to apply whether you're in middle school or high school or elementary school. And then I guess I won't get into too specifics of each of those because I want to make sure this generalizes. Sorry. But like, look at the various math competitions for that age group. And I would say, do you think your students could start in the like first of that series? So like Math Counts has like local, state, nationals. AMC has AMC 10, AMI, USIMO. Can they start on the AMC 10 problems? Can they start on the local Math Counts problems? And that's going to have to be your judgment as an educator of like, do the students know enough that these won't be scary? And I think there's tons of resources if they're already at the level where those problems aren't scary. If you are at the level that those problems are scary or too much, go down an age group level. Of course, that only works so much. If you have elementary school students, there aren't that many math competitions for them, and there's not another level to go down to. I would say, like, I mean, it's hard as an educator, but you'd have to potentially do the legwork yourself, especially for those younger age groups, to like simplify the problems before they get them, and like work them up to the more complicated problems. And like, I think especially local Math Counts, like I think those should be approachable with some help for almost any middle school student. And so the step is just, and that's putting a lot on you as an educator, and I don't know where those lower than local Math Counts problems would best be found. Maybe Megal or Rachel have suggestions.
So I taught at a school in Mexico a couple years ago, and when I was there, I taught like kids from like first grade to 11th grade. And what I found, like, also I don't speak any Spanish, so it's extremely hard to communicate with them. But what I found actually like really fun to do with like the first graders was like Sudoku or like other like logic puzzles, which aren't really like math, but like they do get the problem solving in it, and are like also potentially like kind of fun because they're like I don't know, they look pretty and they're kind of cool.
Thank you, everyone. All this information has been very helpful. Thank you so much.
Great. And even though I'm the moderator and not really a panelist, I'll just throw another thing in, just because it's something I do believe in, which is that a lot of people are used to going to school and trying to get 90% for an A or 80% for a B. And so they're looking for high things. They're not used to going into something and saying, my gosh, I got one of the problems. It's amazing. I coach the Putnam competition at Carnegie Mellon, which MAA also runs. The Putnam competition is a competition where there are a total maximum score of 120 points, and the median score every year is approximately 1 point. So and the thing that I coach, if you solve one problem, it's like, wow, you did it. But I'm trying to say, like, as an educator also, if you can actually help move people into a mindset of, you got one, it's amazing. That also changes your outlook on life, because you might want to, in life, also try hard things, as opposed to just try things that are shoo-ins, which is sort of related to actually what I was trying to dig out of the rest of the panelists, because I'm pretty sure a lot of us think the same way, and I wanted to have them echo it, which is like, it's like when you choose a question, do you spend a lot of your time practicing questions that you already know, or do you spend a lot of time doing things that you have no idea?
I mean, definitely the second one. I mean,
Yes.
have spent much more of my time working on the stuff that I can't solve.
Yes.
And I don't know when I got that mindset that was okay.
Yes, because that's what I'm trying to put out. Because you see, I was asking those questions to kind of peel this out, because a lot of people assume that if you prepare for math contests, what that means is you just like got the methods and you just practice the things you already know how to do. But also, like, oftentimes when you're hunting for a question, actually, I'm curious, what do the other panelists do? If you're looking through a list of questions and there's a bunch of them that you already think you know how to do, what do you do with those? I'm actually quite curious. Everyone has a different approach. Like, you've got this pile of questions. Some of them you look at and you're like, I could probably do that if I spent some time. Some of you are like, I have no idea what the heck's going on. What's your reaction when you look at this list of problems? Like, when you're learning, not on a contest, like when you're learning. Everyone has a different approach. Like, you're looking at some past contests. It's like, these things I probably could do if I spent some time, and then these things I have no idea.
Definitely go for the hard ones that I don't know how to do, and then, like, if those are too much, back up to the other ones, like, as a little bit of a boost.
So Serge, this is sort of what I wanted to pull out. It's just like, because as soon as you have this kind of a mindset, it's actually okay that most of them you can't do, because that was the whole point. And that will help them in life, like, long term, because then they hunt for the hard things. Cool. Let's do some other questions that we promised to discuss, which is, we're also kind of curious. Let's run around the room. Does anyone have any tips that you might give to a future IMO or EGMO participant? Apparently, we're focusing on the Olympiad, the proof side. Any hints, any tips? If everyone can share like a tip, that would be awesome.
I think a lot of your performance on contest day really depends on your confidence or your attitude towards that day. Like, somehow you have to strike the right balance between like thinking you can actually solve problems, but also like not being like, oh, everything is trivial. Because I think either thinking everything's too hard or thinking that everything's going to be really easy, just like you won't solve any problems.
If you're really optimizing for test day, like, really know your strengths and weaknesses. Generally, the problems are sorted from easier to harder, but that doesn't mean they're easier to harder for everyone. So make sure you look at every problem, and if you see a hard geo problem and an easy combo problem, and geo's your strength, and you think you have a hint of an idea on the geo problem, do the hard problem. Don't necessarily do them in order.
One thing I found when I took AMC or AME contests was that it would be helpful to do like a practice test in the morning before the contest, because it will like warm me up or whatever. Some people might feel the reverse and want to not do math for like the 2 days before the contest. So yeah, that's like a small thing, but it's maybe useful. With regards to prepping, probably like I do think that for AMC AME level, a lot of it is just doing lots of problems. Developing problem solving is pretty important. And reading AOPS books. That's for like larger prep, and for like the day of the contest, decide whether or not you want to do math that day before the contest.
Evan, Luke, do you guys have some tips?
I mean, it you know, like, I guess, like, if the problem, well, one thing, I guess, just like, if you find the problems, like, especially hard, like, or I don't know, like, just don't get too demoralized and don't give up. Like, if you haven't solved anything in the first 4 hours, that doesn't mean that you're not going to solve anything in the last half hour.
Anyone else want to share a tip?
Oh, I guess we're going around, so I can say a thing. In terms of actually useful advice, I'm going to link a page. Not in terms of. I'm about to say one blurb, but the reason I say this jokingly is because I feel like there's not that much I can say in 4 sentences that will be better than pages I've written. But yeah, I think something along the lines of what Jenny said is try the one mistake that I see even the most experienced students doing is try all 3 problems, because I cannot tell you how many times I am designing a test and I'm like, okay, I have these 2 problems that are about the same difficulty, and one of them has to be problem 1 and the other has to be problem 2. And no matter which one no matter what order I put it in, the scores on problem 2 will be lower. I know this from experience now. And it's because it's even worse with 2 and 3. It's just because so many people just do not attempt the problem because they look at the problem for 5 seconds and are like, oh, it's problem 3, so I'm not really going to think about it. For my own students, I've started telling them that they're required to start every test by thinking about problem 3 for 20 minutes, because otherwise they're never going to do it. So in terms of my 1 sentence blurb, that's all I have to say.
This definitely came up on the IMO this year. American.
You're welcome.
But some of us solved problem 3 because problem 2 was really, really hard.
Yep. Sounds good. So let's continue on. Can anyone say anything about, or does anyone want to say anything about any of your math mentors, or any teachers, or any particular ways of learning of teaching that have changed the way you approach things? Or did you learn by watching students? Oh, go on, Jenny.
I had a very interesting middle school experience. Again, I think I'm a bit on the older side for this panel, but I in middle school was when I really started doing math competitions, and I should have, I don't know, probably should have been demoralized. It was in middle school, we had split gender gym classes. So in gym class, I would be made fun of for being on the math team. And then in math team, nobody would want to work with me because I was a girl. And I had one teacher there who just kept encouraging me and actually started mentoring me on the side. I would there would be team practices twice a week, and then I would also just work on with him one-on-one twice a week. And that support that I got when I wasn't getting it from other students was I think really what kept me with mathematics and kept doing math competitions.
Wow, that's phenomenal. I think that's also a lesson for all of us who teach. So that's great. Other people have anyone that they want to, any experience they want to point out?
I definitely have very supportive parents. Like, the first 2 times I went to the Math Olympiad summer program, there was I was too young to be in the dorm. The university had some rule, and so my mother came and stayed with me in a hotel for 3.5 weeks for 2 summers. And so yeah, I have very supportive parents.
let's roll on to the next question that was inside this summary, which is also quite interesting, which is like, how has your experience in this IMO and the EGMO impacted your student journey and your life?
Definitely, like a lot of the people I know, like my friends, are people I know from the Math Olympiad program. I think this is especially accentuated by the fact that I'm homeschooled, so it's not like I have, friends from school. When you're in a school with one student, you don't have a lot of friends from school. But yeah, it's definitely like a lot of really cool people, a lot of really cool people from the Math Olympiad program, that the community. So yeah, it's a really good community, and I would also like to point out, like, maybe people might have some conception of like, oh, the top students are competing among, there are 20 students and only 6 places. There must be cutthroat competition. It's not like that. It's definitely very, friendly, collaborative. It's not cutthroat competition or anything like that. It's a collaborative. It's more of a collaborative atmosphere than maybe many people would think.
You mean it's like, oh my gosh, I finally found people who are crazy like me. This is really fun. Let's be friends. Other people?
I met lots of people through math competitions, and I feel like I haven't really like kept in touch with a lot of those folks, but like as soon as I see them, like it's just like old friends, like that, like just people who I've coached, people who I've been on a team with, other coaches. When I was at EGMO, like I started going to a lot of math conferences, especially in undergrad and grad school, and I would just see the other coaches of the other EGMO teams there. Yeah, it was it really like expands your network, and like you're gonna run into these folks if you go to math related things, and then you'll have people there.
Other people? Well, so I mean, it sounds to me like there's a common thread here, which is like getting to meet other people, and working with other people is a really important part, which is really beautiful, because a lot of people assume that like competition is sort of the opposite of that. If it has the word competition, people assume that it's about for myself as opposed to finding other people. But actually, yeah, let's dispel that myth right now. That doesn't seem like what we see at the very top. Other things that people are often quite curious about, it was not on the list, but I know that a lot of people have experienced some difficulty when they transition from problems that have numerical answers to problems which are written proofs. It's actually quite hard. Do you guys have any advice or experience from your own experience or people that you work with of how to move over that point? Could be your own experience too.
I don't really feel like I have much to say here. It's almost like a new field of math. I mean, it's not, but like you don't do a bunch of geometry problems and then just expect to be good at combinatorics. You have to go learn a bit about it, practice some problems there. And I think the same thing with proofs. Like Evan's site has lots of great resources on learning how to write proofs, and like reading proofs is a really good way to get started. So reading the actual answers, because like you're not going to be able to produce one of these long form answers if you've never even seen what they look like before. So like just getting yourself familiar with it, where maybe you don't start by solving problems, but rather reading a problem, thinking about it for a bit, getting your gears warmed up. Don't need to solve it, and then just go and read the solution and see like, oh, these are how you put the pieces together. This is how you do it formally. Yeah, it's just a completely different thing. And if you aren't familiar with it, it's going to take time for students to transition to it. I see Serb has turned his camera back on.
And in my experience, I had a lot of experience from a young age at a local math circle, at the math circle of the University of Texas at Arlington. And it was like, we would have a handout with some problems, and then like students, including me, would go up to the board and like explain solutions to problems. And so in a sense, like that's sort of the important part. It's just like, there's some problem that and you have to, like explain why your answer, explain why it's correct, or explain why a certain thing is true. And that's really all that's basic, explaining to a certain level of convincing, like explaining in a convincing way, and you have to be careful about obviously there's a lot of being careful about how, you actually have to be convincing mathematically, but explaining in a convincing way why a certain thing is true. And so, that was, I guess, that was preparation for Olympiads in a way, like not concerned with the actual writing it down, but just sort of the formulating the arguments in a way.
I actually had a pretty similar experience to Luke in that I learned how to do proof contests from like going to math circle for a year or so. So yeah, I think it was basically the same thing where the questions I would get, the questions they would discuss at the math circle weren't like AMC questions that you do in 10 minutes. They were like these harder questions where you actually have to like justify why something is true. Something that I realized later was basically like an Olympiad question. So yeah, I don't know. I also think that going to math circles, if you have the opportunity for this, is an amazing experience. And moreover, I think there's like a mentality, or like I think there's like a belief that like proof contests are harder than numerical answer contests, which on average is true. But I do want to point out that there are a lot of like easier proof contests, and they're probably linked on like Evan's page. Tell me if I'm wrong. Like there's probably some.
Yeah, I want to echo what Mako and Luke said. In particular, there's a few comments I can make. One is that the difficulty for proofs is, in some sense, like particularly bad in the United States relative to other countries. If you talk to like Sasha Rudenko, when he talks about the education system in Ukraine, it's like very different. In the United States, there is not a good culture of being asked to explain anything. The standard system is what in the US called show your work, which means like you just kind of write some numbers or something down and then write some more numbers down. And if it's read at all, you're following what a procedure that the teacher told you to do. So the teacher checks off that you applied the steps of the algorithm correctly. And this is like largely not what proofwriting is about. I think it's largely the case that I won't say like most other countries, but in other countries where people are more used to having to explain their steps, the transition is significantly less difficult. The second thing is, I think one of the reasons the proof competitions get a reputation for being difficult is because it's not necessarily the fact that you have a proof-based question so much as the set of questions that can be asked is larger. Most Olympiad-shaped problems do not fit in a short answer format. So the students are trying to learn to solve a new class of problems. At the same time, they are also trying to learn how to explain their work, which can be difficult because you're sort of trying to do two things at once. Along these lines, I think for beginners, it's useful to differentiate between writing a correct proof and writing a legible proof. These are very different things. In particular, with respect to competitions, if you have a solution that is correct, it is actually pretty hard to write it badly enough that you do not get credit for it. The graders for the IMO are bend over backwards to try to interpret your work in a way
Evan,
that
don't
fits
tell
into
everyone
a
that.
proof. Okay, fine.
Oh,
Let,
no,
let me
Evan
put it.
just spilled the beans. Anyone
Let,
who's
let me phrase it
watching
more
just calm
negatively,
down.
okay? Let me phrase it more negatively. The quality of writing at the National Math Olympiad in the United States is extremely low. I'll put it that way instead. The proofs are not well written at all. They're so bad that I want to deduct points and can't. I'll put it that way instead. So if you, I guess what I want to say is that if you like take a proof competition and you don't get the points you think you should have gotten, you should strongly consider the possibility that your solution is not correct before the grader couldn't understand your solution. Like really, really strongly. My immigrant, yeah. But many other countries are much better than the US at this. It's so the last thing is the practical advice is if you can find someone who's willing to read your proofs and give you feedback, that's probably the best thing to do. The issue is that it's really hard to find these people. There's not that many in the United States, and most of them are pretty busy people. Most, I would say the average US high school teacher is probably not capable of doing this. So if you can find people who are willing to do this, good for you. If not, I don't know what to tell you. Ask people in a different country or something. Okay, I'll give some actual useful advice. There are some competitions in the United States that are free to everyone and will give you at least a little feedback on your proofs. There's one that's called the USA Mathematical Talent Search. That's the one that the Art of Problem Solving runs. They give you a month to work on your solutions. You submit them, and then you'll get like a little bit of feedback. Not like a ton of feedback, but like you'll get like a few sentences of feedback. If it's fine, they'll just say good job. If there's like some actual issues, they'll like point them out. So you can get at least a little bit of feedback this way. And then there are some other regional competitions in other places, like the Bay Area has a competition called the Bay Area Math Olympiad, although I don't think they give feedback. That might have changed, but I think when I was a student, they didn't give feedback. Yeah, and everything I said is on the link that I posted 15 minutes ago. So.
Great. Well, thanks, Evan. And anyone who happened to tune into the session now has discovered the fact that the USAMO grading is a very extensive process. But please do try to write a good proof. Don't rely on Evan and the others trying to rescue you, or else we will need even more time to grade the contest. Okay, great. I have another question that's a little bit of a flip side. But we've been talking about how to successfully do all of these things. But not everyone makes it to the EGMO or the IMO team. There are only 4 on one of those. There are only 6 people on the others. There are all these other contests where you go up to a certain level and then it cuts and then you miss the cut. What do you say to people who miss a cut? I'll explain. Like sometimes I go and watch a contest and you see that the person who just got second in the country is so disappointed. What do you say to those people? Second in the country is pretty awesome, by the way.
So this is just my personal view, not necessarily correct and not necessarily descriptive of what the MA believes. But my view on this has always been that the purpose of mathematical competitions is not to measure ability, it's to develop it. It's supposed to be that the value happens in the process of training for the competition. The actual results of the competition. You think of it this way: if you prepare for a competition like the National USA Math Olympiad, it's a competition that happens for 2 days every year out of 365 days. And the thing that I tell students is that the value you get out of this competition is not really just what happens on those 2 days; it's what you get out of the other 363 days. I think the value you get out of the competitions comes from the time that you spend training for it, is the TLDR. I think you develop a lot of skills, not even necessarily math skills, like just skills that are more broadly useful through working on math competitions. Because even if you become a professional mathematician, a lot of the stuff like Euclidean geometry or whatever is not things that you would use on a day-to-day basis. But I mean, why do we do these competitions if the only purpose is to like distinguish the top students, right? Like you don't you don't need to create like a system this complicated if you're only interested in talent selection. There are actually, you don't need to do anything if you're interested in talent selection. If you just like do nothing, then like the people who are more naturally talented will just naturally get ahead, sort of by definition. Yeah. Okay. I don't
Other
know
thoughts? Other thoughts? Anyone have other thoughts? And also practical things, because we have coaches here, right? We have coaches, we have teachers here, we have students here. It's like, how do you deal with the emotions, and what would you do to encourage? Because in fact, if we do a good job, we might have more people want to do it, as opposed to people feeling bad about I lost. And of course, some of these are national coaches we have here who talk to people who missed the gold cutoff by 1 point. We've had that. We've dealt with that. What do we do?
And maybe like it's just maybe good to point out that like there are only a few people, like Poe said, there are only a few people who are going to make the IMO team or make MOP or make Math Counts National Countdown or whatever. But like whatever sort of somewhat artificial limit there is on however many people make something, like there maybe it's like, oh, only 60 people each year make MOP. But it's not only 60 people at each year are going to have a successful life. It's not like that. We don't, MOP or the IMO or making the USIMO or making the AMI or whatever. It's not a monopoly on having a successful and, fulfilling life.
I will say one thing, which is that I think once you are at a sufficiently high level, this will happen automatically, because in my years of coaching, I have never had a student come and tell me that they were so disappointed that they didn't get so-and-so result that they wish they hadn't spent the time on math competitions. Like, I don't think I've ever had a student tell me, like, even knowing that this was the final result, I've never had a student tell me, like, if I knew this was the final result, I wouldn't have spent so much effort trying. But I also have unusually good students, so this might be a bit biased perspective.
I mean, I'm not sure like there's much to say. Like, I remember being very upset about missing cutoffs, but like I never stopped doing math because of it. And like, I don't know, there's gonna be cutoffs just because naturally, like USIMO, we can like only get so many graders, so we have to cut off somewhere because we can't possibly support everybody who took AME. So there's going to be cutoffs for some of these, and that's going to not be fun for some folks. And I don't know, it's as long as it's not discouraging, like it's okay to be upset that you didn't achieve something you were going for. Like, and I don't feel like it's wrong to be upset. I think it's okay to be upset as long as you move forward after that. And so as long as there's no lingering feelings or effects from that, like, and sometimes it might even be more motivating, like, oh, well, now like I'll get it next year or something like that. Then I'm not even sure that there's anything to say besides that I'm sorry, let's try again next year. Like,
that's a very interesting angle, actually. This idea that, in some sense, it is maybe a good thing to be wanting to do better next time. And that feedback is like, if you play a game and you lose the game, it's like, I lost the game. Well, then I'm going to beat it next time, right? And then if there isn't a next time because you graduate, it's like, well, then let me go and see what I can do next time. It's like, that's actually probably a good thing. Maybe that's why we don't give prizes to everyone just for showing up. So that's pretty good. I want to use a little bit of the time that's left, which is only a little now. I see that there's some questions. Some are there was one pretty precise question about like taking multivariable calculus in the upcoming year as an incoming sophomore and wanting to devote a lot of time to go and try to make all the way up if, for example, you were just under the AME cutoff and you want to keep going. And there's like all of these different things that the person is doing. And the key question is, what is the best way to prepare for the competition in the shortest amount of time? That is a very common type of question. Suppose that you don't have much time and you need to get as fast as you can to be a super good person at competitions. Any response to that question?
I would say just do what you would normally do if you had a large amount of time. Like, take the time to learn the math properly, practice problems, read proofs, read solutions. I would also say don't burn yourself out. So if you feel like you have a short amount of time, you could really easily push yourself to sprint or burn out or overwork. And whereas if you have a longer period of time, or you think you have a longer period of time, also, like, AMC, I still feel like is pretty far away. Like, you still have a lot of time to prep. So I wouldn't view that as a short time at all. Like, take it.
It's in November now, isn't it?
Oh, I forgot the timeline.
Yeah,
But
changes this year.
yeah. But like, view it as much more of a marathon where you're like pacing yourself. Like, if you cram for these couple months leading up to the AMC, like, are you even gonna have fun taking the AMC? That would be my advice, which is don't view it as a short time and don't try and cram just because it's a short time. Just do it a little bit at a time.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. The idea being that there's no way to get rich quick. Or in some sense, if there was this super efficient way and we told everyone the secret, well, if we told more than 1,000 people the secret, only 500 of them will qualify for the USAMO/USAGMO anyway. So it's not really possible to have a secret in that sense. So Jenny is basically saying, let's go with the healthy approach, the journey, get the best journey. If you manage to place in, good for you. Let me close up with a question which is about motivation, because it's really hard to stay motivated on a long path. What made you want to do this pathway towards EGMO/IMO and kept you going?
For me, I just really wanted to go to MOP where, like, many of my friends were. So like in my high school, there was no math team. No one else in my high school did math. So like, I think when I met people who did math at MOP, I was like, oh my God, like, these are amazing people. And I was like completely in love. So then every year I just wanted to, like, make MOP again, which is, I don't know, I think it's a bit of a coin flip if, so like you want to like kind of maximize your like expected value of that coin flip. So you just, at least I worked very hard to try to make it back and see my friends again.
So what I just heard is it was not so that you could get into MIT, but it was so that you could hang out with interesting people.
Yeah.
Anyone else have other thoughts?
For me, this is similar to what I said earlier, where I just kept doing math contests because the problems I was doing were really fun. I don't think like anything would have been particularly different if the AMC, if getting like into MOP weren't like good for college applications or whatever. Like, I think I would have just done the problems anyway because they were fun for me. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's just I enjoy doing it. It's fun. I get to meet new people who also enjoy this thing that I do. I don't really feel like there's much more to it than that. I never had like I never had my parents push me towards this. They were supportive of it, but it was never forced on me. So it was always just, this is something I like doing.
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar. All my friends did it, and if I didn't do it, I would have been bored out of my mind. Also, my parents kept telling me to do less math, which made me want to do it more.
Tip for parents: if you want your kids to do more math, you tell them do less math. Well, in Evan's case, that's what it was. Luke, do you want to share anything? You obviously spent a lot of time on all of this.
I mean, like, at least part of it was just like because of natural like aptitude for it. Like, you know, what else? Like, you know, some of it was like, what else was I going to like? What else was I going to do or something? Like, at least for part of the reason or something. You know, like I wasn't opposed to competition. You know, I was, you know, I liked competing sort of, and I was good at it. So, you know, that's at least part of the reason. Shrug or something.
Cool. I guess I'll share, just since I asked the question. But I mean, for me, it was just that, yes, the people were really important. But I also just generally in life, I'm always curious, am I capable of doing X? And so I will choose an X that is out of reach and then attempt to do it and see how far you get. And it's just like the sport of, well, it's hard, therefore let's try it. Let's see what happens. We have like 3 minutes left. Is there any last question that any of the people who are watching might like to ask? We can hit that. Oh yes, this one which we missed. Thank you very much, Jerry Grossman. And this is you create these problems. And does anyone have any advice or pet peeves on the composition of AMC and AMY?
I mean, one thing that comes to my mind is I wonder if it like doesn't do an optimal job of like selecting for USAMO. I actually wonder like if there's some like do people who get like a 280 in like a 270 index like do noticeably better than like a 240 index? Because like, you know, if the qualifying indices just keep getting higher, it's like, well, you know, maybe the person who is very accurate and manages to get 12 problems on the AMY without making any sillies, like, is that person necessarily going to do better at thinking for a long time on one problem versus, you know, maybe the guy who maybe made some silly mistakes but would have done better on the USAMO? But I don't know that I necessarily have an very obvious, I mean, maybe like make the problems more like Olympiad problems on the AMY, but then you run into an opposite issue of how do you make it more accessible? You know, I don't have much of a magical solution.
We could have an AMY where the answers go from 0000 to 9999, and you get full credit for the right answer, and all the sillies have like partial varying amounts of points. I just made that up right now. It might be an awful idea.
I mean,
You're not the first person to suggest that.
Oh, okay. In that case, that means it's a good idea because someone else came up with it first.
In fact, one idea I've sort of wondered about is like maybe instead of having 2 rounds of contests before the USAMO, like what if there were like 3, where like the first round could be even easier to bring more people into math contests, and then the second round would be like somewhere between the AMC 12 and the AMY, and then the third round was like sort of more geared towards selecting the right people for the USAMO, and was maybe like a little bit hard toward the harder end of AMY or something. But that's obviously that would be a massive change to a whole bunch of stuff.
This has also been proposed before. Yeah, I definitely think a lot of the issues are structural, not exam content.
Maybe one like small concrete thing that suggestion based on like what everyone's been saying is like try to select for problems that like don't have a lot of sillies you can make. Try to like choose problems that aren't just that like I remember there being a lot of counting problems where like you could just miss a case and you would like be off by 1. And I'm not really sure that selects for the right type of person. I mean, it's not terrible at selecting for the right type of person, but it's not great. So like just make an effort to choose problems that aren't like that.
Cool.
Should vote for them.
Cool. Well,
Basically, my voting patterns on the Amy contest too, but I cannot
well,
vote
that
it a
sounds
lot.
great. So I apologize that it looks like we unfortunately have run out of time for the panel, but I do want to use the last second or so to thank all of the panelists for spending the time to talk to us. Thank you to all of the audience for asking such interesting questions. And we hope that we'll see you in some way or another on this journey.